Right now, you are probably staring at a screen, waiting for a tiny digital notification to pop up. You tap a piece of glass, send a quick text message, and instantly reach someone across the globe. You speak thousands of words every single day, yet you constantly feel completely misunderstood. Your modern obsession with endless texting, digital status updates, and superficial chatter is a disease of the cage. Your ancestors survived the incredibly dangerous, terrifying wilderness not by shouting at each other, but by possessing an incredibly deep biological mastery over silent empathy. For 99% of human history, there were no keyboards, no written alphabets, and no digital profiles. There was only the vast, quiet expanse of the wild. We have convinced ourselves that more data equals better understanding. We drown in a massive ocean of instant information, yet we are suffering from an absolute epidemic of crippling loneliness. And yet, our ancient ancestors did not just grunt mindlessly at the dirt. They formed incredibly deep social bonds, coordinated massive hunts, and shared complex emotional realities. How did they achieve this absolute communicative mastery long before the invention of written language? To solve this incredible mystery, we must dismantle the biggest biological myth in human history: the mindless, grunting caveman. Welcome to Ancient Huddle. Today, we deconstruct how ancient humans actually talked before the invention of modern language. We will look at a revolutionary fossil discovery from Kebara Cave in Israel. We will explore the deeply embedded biological secret hidden inside your very own eyes. And stay until the very end, because we will reveal an emotional realization about prehistoric storytelling, a tribal huddle that completely reframes our modern, isolated relationship with communication. For decades, popular culture has painted a very specific picture of prehistoric speech. We are told that early humans and Neanderthals were completely incapable of complex language. This image portrays our ancestors as brute animals, communicating only through violent screams, chest thumping, and simple, ape-like grunts. We assume that because they lived in caves, their minds were trapped in total darkness. The premise is simple. Since they did not build complex cities, they must not have possessed the complex biological hardware required to speak. We look at their heavy brow, ridges, and thick bones and assume they were stupid. We mistake a lack of modern technology for a lack of internal intelligence. But anthropological science has recently dealt a massive blow to this theory. The speechless, grunting brute is a complete myth. And this brings us to our second nested loop, the tiny throat bone of the Levant. To understand how prehistoric humans actually spoke, we cannot just look at their massive brain cavities. A large brain is useless for speech if the physical throat cannot produce complex, articulated sounds. To find the real truth, we had to look for an incredibly fragile, tiny piece of biological engineering. For a very long time, scientists believed that human speech was a massive evolutionary accident. They thought it only appeared incredibly recently in our historical timeline. Archaeologists excavating a 60,000-year-old Neanderthal grave inside Kebara cave in Israel discovered something completely breathtaking. Trapped perfectly inside the fossilized skeleton of an ancient Neanderthal was a tiny U-shaped bone known as the hyoid. The hyoid is a delicate bone sitting deep in the throat. It anchors the tongue and allows the vocal cords to produce the vast, complex range of sounds required for spoken language. Without this exact biological structure, your voice would be a hollow, unstructured gasp. Because it is not attached to any other bones, it almost never survives in the fossil record. It is normally lost forever to the crushing weight of time and dirt. But when researchers carefully scanned the Kebara 2 hyoid bone, they found something that shocked the scientific community. The Neanderthal hyoid bone was absolutely identical to the hyoid bone inside your throat right now. When biomechanical engineers ran complex computer simulations on the internal structure of the bone, they proved that it was subjected to the exact same physical stresses as a modern-speaking human. The microscopic wear and tear on the fossil proved that this creature was actively talking. 60,000 years ago, Neanderthals possessed the exact biological hardware required to produce complex, highly articulated speech. They did not just scream in fear. They controlled their breath. They manipulated delicate vocal folds. They modulated their pitch to convey deep, nuanced emotions. This means ancient humans were not just mindless animals grunting at the moon. They were highly sophisticated vocal communicators. They possessed the physical capacity for deep, meaningful conversation. Spoken language is not a modern invention of civilization. It is an ancient, Paleolithic survival tool. This leads us to our third nested loop, the silent hunt of the savannah. If our ancestors possessed the biological capacity to speak loudly, why didn't they just shout instructions at each other all the time? Using vocal language is incredibly efficient for planning, but out in the open, dangerous wild, making a loud noise is a massive risk. The Pleistocene world was packed with massive, terrifying apex predators. A single loud word could mean absolute death. If you shout while stalking a giant mammoth, the prey runs away. If you talk loudly while gathering berries, the hidden cave lion hears exactly where you are. Our ancestors were not the strongest or fastest animals on the Paleolithic landscape. They were relatively weak, slow, and incredibly vulnerable to ambush. Evolutionary psychologists studying primate behavior discovered something absolutely fascinating about human communication. To survive the incredibly dangerous daytime environment, ancient humans had to evolve a way to communicate highly complex thoughts in absolute, perfect silence. When you look into the eyes of a chimpanzee or a gorilla, you will notice that their eyes are almost entirely dark. They do not have visible white sclera. A dark eye hides where the animal is looking. It is a biological shield against aggressive, dominant competitors. But humans are completely unique. We are the only primates on Earth with massive, highly visible white backgrounds surrounding our irises. This biological trait is the foundation of the Cooperative Eye Hypothesis. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, human eyes evolved to be highly visible so that other members of the tribe could perfectly track our line of sight. By simply darting their eyes to the left, an ancient hunter could silently signal the exact location of a hidden predator to his partner. A mother could instantly warn her child of a venomous snake simply by widening her white eyes in silent terror. We gave up the camouflage of dark eyes because the evolutionary reward of silent, cooperative trust was far more powerful. We did not survive the wild because we were the loudest animals. We survived because we possessed the brilliant, empathetic capacity to read each other's minds through a simple, silent glance. But our adaptation for communication goes even deeper, down to the very social fabric of the campfire. Humans are not solitary predators that hunt silently and then sleep alone. We are deeply expressive, highly emotional primates. While modern society teaches us to use language for superficial digital status updates and fast, anxious emails, ancient tribes desperately relied on language for communal survival. By working together to share their deep internal worlds, the tribe created a massive, shared mental map of reality. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar proposed the social brain hypothesis. He suggested that language actually evolved as a way to replace physical grooming. Monkeys spend hours picking bugs out of each other's fur to build trust. But ancient humans lived in massive tribes. We did not have enough time in the day to physically groom everyone, so we evolved gossip. We evolved storytelling. We evolved the ability to verbally stroke each other's minds. Our survival is literally built on sharing the heavy emotional burden of existence. We are cooperative storytellers, built to protect a diverse, deeply connected family. Now, let us bring these three loops together. Let us look at the grand realization of what this means for us. When you look back at the dangerous Pleistocene world, you do not see a brutal, terrifying landscape of silent, isolated fear. You see a highly cooperative, incredibly warm tribal huddle. The act of talking was not a private, isolated, digital transaction. It was the absolute anchor of prehistoric trust. While the daylight was a high-risk, silent environment, the gathering of bodies around a bright fire to finally speak out loud provided a steady, deeply reliable, emotional safety net that kept the entire family alive. When the sun finally set and the terrifying predators of the night began to prowl, the tribe did not scatter into the dark. They sat shoulder to shoulder, forming an unbreakable biological wall against the terrible unknown. And this brings us to the ultimate humbling contrast of the ancient huddle. In the modern world, we sit alone in our quiet rooms, staring at isolated screens, sending endless text messages, and completely isolating ourselves from the true power of the human voice. We spend hours analyzing the subtle tone of a sterile black and white text message. We desperately search for emotional warmth in an absolutely cold digital medium. Language has become a solitary digital utility, a fast exchange of data, and a frustrating barrier to real connection. But 60,000 years ago, sitting on the dusty floor of a dark cave, language was the ultimate expression of communal love. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner studied the conversational habits of modern hunter-gatherers and discovered an incredible truth about human speech. During the harsh, dangerous daylight hours, the tribe used language purely for logistics. They talked about hunting. They complained about the heat. They argued over the direction of travel. Daytime language was a strict, highly calculated tool used entirely for intense physical survival. But when the sun went down and the tribe huddled tightly together around the roaring campfire, everything changed. The logistical complaints vanished. The practical talk stopped. 81% of all nighttime conversation was dedicated entirely to storytelling. When an elder spoke into the glowing embers, he did not just share a random piece of data. He did not send a superficial update. He simply looked around the roaring fire. He saw the glowing, highly expressive white eyes of his family staring back at him. He shared a complex, deeply emotional myth about the stars, ensuring that the wisdom of the ancestors was passed down. He sang rhythmic, powerful songs that synchronized the heartbeats of the entire listening tribe. He wove a powerful story that bound the entire tribe together in a shared emotional reality. Language was not a solitary metric of individual cleverness. It was a shared biological anchor of absolute trust. We believe that our modern loneliness can be cured by sending more text messages or finding the perfect digital community. We try to force our minds to find deep meaning in a shallow, silent screen. We constantly upgrade our phones, believing that better technology will finally give us the deep emotional intimacy we desperately crave. But we are missing the entire point of prehistoric communication. Our ancestors survived not because they could send instant data across a vast distance, but because they possessed an incredibly fluid, adaptive empathy that brought their internal worlds to life. They learned how to synchronize their minds through shared vocal rhythm. They learned how to build a fortress of sound that kept the terrible darkness at bay. And more importantly, they communicated effectively because they sat together in the dark. Your mind does not just crave a faster internet connection or a quicker reply. It craves the huddle. It craves the shared emotional warmth of a real story, the slow crackle of the midnight fire, and the deep, relaxing knowledge that someone is actually listening to your voice. So the next time you put down your phone and look someone in the eyes, do not just rush to the point. Put away the anxious, fast-paced urgency of modern digital survival. Feel a deep, quiet respect for the millions of years of brave, cooperative empathy that built your very mind. Speak adaptively, listen communally, and remember that the ultimate survival secret of our ancestors wasn't just that they learned to talk, but how they told stories to each other in the dark. If this video has changed how you understand the deep time history of our ancestors, please subscribe to Ancient Huddle. We are dedicated to sharing highly researched, deeply informative stories about ancient human life, survival, and the evolutionary secrets trapped in our bones. Thank you for watching, and remember to cherish the huddle.